You mentioned earlier
Today?
today, don't believe anybody else's BS.
Exactly. Don't believe your own or anybody else's. Say, quagmire, if there is such a thing relative to peeps and relations and self-creation, it's because you're believing too much. There you have it.
What do you mean by belief?
What do you think?
Well,
Because you're asking a question because you're not sure what belief means. So what does belief mean?
yeah, it's to stubbornly be convinced of the existence of something despite lack of proof or despite evidence. It's
Close?
it's belief. How is don't believe anything a different scenario from don't, I don't know, engage with somebody's BS or don't substantiate it for them, or
Are you talking about addictive neurotic patterns relative to people? Yeah, you
Sure.
have to cut through that in yourself first. So,
and what's left when there is no belief of anybody's BS?
that's another question you're prepared to answer. With BS gone, what is there?
No BS. Space. No opportunity to let something else.
Don't
the
believe. Don't believe you don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't believe all that you perceive as a need. See? You might need a fraction of what you are running as a way of consuming information and karma from other people. And a great counter to the whole point is what is sitting? Is it a process of believing? Or is it the posture of renunciation, believing nothing? Zero.
Does belief make it so?
Try again.
Does believing a thing, or does believing in a thing, a phenomena, a thought, does that give it substance?
Well, any perception is an obstruction. So we can say that any perception on any level is obstructive. Not a bad thing, but it's obstructive. And could also be considered a distraction. And that's self-created. That's what you as a human are designed to do. Be open to every distraction. Everybody in a certain way, as if you were born to be a garbage can. Or a sponge. And this is not about things in the material world. This is about, let's say, the business of practice. And in the actual business of practice, you can't even talk about some of the things we need to talk about, see, from what we know, not what we believe, but what we know. And let's say we hope we're beyond believing, see, because believing then is not quite here, not quite almost here. So believing is definitely not good enough. Wow. Yeah. The connection is not complete. Yeah.
There is no sufficient quantity of faith.
Faith doesn't enter it. In other words, there's no room for mind stuff that we have been calling programming. However, we can go to the point now where if we're talking about karma, we need to use karma and not be overwhelmed by karma. See?
The language is delicate because we're still talking about we. We're still talking about
beings,
individuals.
Beings by nature, specifically unenlightened beings, very obviously. They're the only things that can be overwhelmed by belief, faith, not knowing, guessing, assuming, presuming, and so on. Almost clear. In the fog, in the blur, in the smoky worlds. Smoke screen. Make believe. Perfect.
And so what is the experience of no perception and no belief?
It's this. And beyond this.
One of the things that has become clear and also been demonstrated
You mean nothing becomes clear? Proceed.
Yeah. One difference between practices that I have experienced elsewhere and here is it can be the difference between feeling good and letting go for good. There is this distinction.
Letting go for good?
Yeah. Like,
when do you let go for good?
Well,
is that a projection of something? Letting go for good.
Well, forever. Finally.
Have you let go forever?
There are things that just aren't with me anymore.
Okay.
The burden isn't.
Now, did they go because you let go, or did they go because they have no more reality?
Yeah.
And that even though you want to have or to do or to engage with certain beings, they fall away. And that's due to the actual illusion of bondage, illusion of clinging, illusion of attachment, and wanting to control peeps and things. Doesn't hold. These are things that are in time, they come in time, they fade out. They come to go. That pertains to every moment coming and going. See?
And so the question of a self letting a thing or a person or a situation go is all a scenario that doesn't...
You believe it. You want to believe that you have the power to control what comes and what goes, in a sense. See, if you're properly sitting, there's nothing coming and going, because there's nothing that becomes obviously real to you. See, nothing becomes obvious. In the midst of all of then nothing makes it real, that there's no one in the way and nothing in the way. Then we can say, theoretically, it depends on your listening. And what you are willing to hear, or go beyond hearing.
It's nice to be able to... It's
Listen to yourself.
It's a privilege that I hope wears out shortly, to be able to engage in this conversation seemingly from a distance, where you're describing a lived reality and I'm inspecting it, I'm checking it out, I see it, I'm okay, that makes sense.
You've assumed distance from it.
Yes.
You have assumed that. You believe it.
Yes.
You pretend it.
Yeah.
It's pretending to be other than what it is. It's a game. It's a program. A refusal, a resistance to perceiving what is beyond your perception. Self-perception.
Yeah. And occasionally, without my consent, very much to my relief, I'm plunged into it. One of the examples was when we played together.
Are you speaking about the first time?
First time, yeah.
Or the disaster?
And yeah, it was immersive.
You forgot to remember yourself.
Yeah.
You forgot yourself.
And the music.
Because it was shocking for you at that point. For you and your circuits, it was unprecedented. You were overwhelmed by something you had no control over. And you were trying to keep up with what it was because it was that shocking in a sense. All right. It crept up on you. Bang. And you had that Satori-like episode. And that's practice. You don't know what happened. And nothing happened. See, that's what you didn't know, is that nothing happened. Nothingness took you by surprise. In that case, if we're talking about music experience, then that's good music experience. Because it's not about your egotism. Right? It's not about self-meditation in terms of limitation. See? Then the function of teacher is fulfilled. Teacher has nothing to teach and nothing to prove in terms of things and theory, but the demonstration in the sound speaks for itself. It's not about ego. It's beyond the ego. It's beyond thought.
Yeah. in this situation, I'm hesitant to describe confusion, to invoke confusion, where the conversation, the vibe is already not that.
Well, that's the case. The case is always not that. But people don't open to that. Huh? You're so caught up in your own drama, you don't open to that. You're swimming in your own emotional undisciplinedness, the chaos of your own free feelings and your self-feelings and the spontaneous or mechanical arising of your feelings and emotional reactions. See? Stuff, mjelda, garbage. Good. Human nature was not real. Here, gone. And it took you with it. And dumped you somewhere else. So you need a reality check. And that's what the guidance process is about. Not manipulating anybody. Just being real to another person. Being real with another person. Going beyond the BS programs of self-gratifying information, data, conversation, and gossip. See? Which serves the self and maybe nothing else. So that is the obstacle and obstruction to real surrender and openness to what practice is. So we don't always know what our self-need is in terms of dragging other people into it and making it their business. So that's when you get caught up in the mucky and ooey-gooey relations with people you don't really need. You don't really want to have manipulated or manipulations from. Because you're playing with your darker side and reinforcing your karmic resistance to letting go of stuff, conversation, peeps, their images, and your own image relative to their image, and ego reinforcement, and other psychologic and psychic barriers that are created in the same stream. Yeah. And then those relations, because they form memories, are in the way of your playing. And you don't even think about it or know it. That as soon as you start remembering the past conversation, you're already out of touch with what you need to be engrossed in or absorbed in, say, as zero. Clearance for whatever it is to come through. Easier said than done unless you have trained yourself to listen. Stop, look, and listen carefully to what your programming is that is getting in the way of what you need to be as a real player, say, a real musician, where every drum beat, boom, is a ah. No peeps, no memories, nothing, just gone. There is the ordinary self-obstructing manifestation of questions that come from your suffering and your not necessarily good questions, but it's better to voice them, get an answer that enables you to let go of it. So the function of the teacher is not necessarily fill you with more garbage to meditate on, but help you to release on the spot what it is that you may be making your problem. Even if you're asking for answers or expressing your solutions. You need to see what it is that sometimes is better let go of completely. See? Which means in practice you learn to assume the pre-question.
A pre-question?
Exactly. What is the pre-impulse? What is the preview? What is the precedent? What is the preface? What is the predisposition? What is the pre-reality? What is the pre-feeling? What is the presumption? Beyond presumption. Space.
It seems like there's a separation between that which is and understands space and that which is not and does not understand space. Self. So the self that has the question, that has the problem, that wants the answer.
Is space. It's all space. Don't doubt it's all space. But who knows it as such? Samsara is enlightenment, but who knows it as such? What's the problem? Who's willing to go deeper than, let's say, the appearance? Or appearances of self-thought, mind and world. Who can be more than the implications of self-thought, mind and world, or the meanings of such ideas or concepts? From space, as space, for space, in space, everything is space. But it needs to be known as such, not thought about as more stuff, but known as suchness.
The question of how to know space as itself, it doesn't seem to be a valid question at this point. But it is also one that I almost want to scream, because
Your very screaming is refusing to realize what it is. Because what it is beyond how. There's no how. When you let go of being used by self-generated mjelda, you don't need to worry about how, because it is what it is. How? No. How here? How is that? So the whole process of mechanical, self-conscious manifesting of the search That mentality which is the search, the avoidance, resistance, the separate process of relating to what is by way of separation as other than what it is, disappears. It's not even useful. That's obsolete. But the general practice, and is therefore called the path of ignorance or unenlightenment, sleeping unconscious. Not aware as what is. Aware of a few things, a few thought processes and patterns and emotional garbage. Not releasing yourself from that. Letting it be. What? Space.
It's striking to me that your answer didn't include any sort of a technique, any sort of a recipe, any sort of a how. That is concrete.
What is beyond now? And what is beyond now is the indestructible. The unconditional. The only real, to use a concept that embraces what it is, or refers to it and infers it. Yeah? Therefore, they said it's incomprehensible and something you can't tolerate. But you have to learn, you have to be trained to tolerate nothing. And maybe that includes silence. The all-forbidden silence of peace. Even for 10 seconds. A moment. The moment of truth. The heart will have its way. Because the heart is the basis of the whole thing. And this practice is really about going against the walls that have been agreed upon, with an intuition of what is beyond it. And that intuition assures you that the heart will have its way. That's why they say practice has to be repetitive. Because what you've amassed over the centuries, over the ages, is a whole lot of karma, obstruction, can do. And here, in the context of the burn of practice, you realize you're working at it, you're chopping them. It's like wood for the fire of deeper understanding, which everyone is at its level. Get to its level, and this thing is done for real.